Alright, welcome back guys to another gun build in Modern Warfare 2. And this is going to be going over the really cool version of the FJX Imperium, aka, or for you older MW2 players, for the outdated guys anyway. That's going to be the intervention, or the M200 sniper rifle. And recently now, they actually buffed it to where it is going to be probably one of the best snipers in the entire game now. And that's only going to be really beaten out when it comes to aggressiveness anyway, in multiplayer. The SPX is obviously still, or SPX 80 is still a very viable option. But now it is beaten out in so many different areas by the FJX Imperium. And I'll be going over how that is in just a second. So, with the new Season 5 patches, or Season 5 Reloaded, we had a bunch of changes, and especially to sniper rifles and marksman rifles that really stood out. And the marksman rifles are going to be really fun now. Like the SAB-50 marksman rifle, they added in so much when it comes to buffs to there. And also to the, Lockwood Mark II. That's also really fun, but more so for skilled players. But let's go over to FJX Imperium. It actually had a really solid general buff. So it gives you ADS speed, or increased ADS speed by about a frame or so it's definitely noticeable. And increased ADS movement speed, so before it was like 0.8 meters a second while you're aimed at sight and moving. Now it's 1.17 meters. So it's still very, very slow. You're not going to get any kind of real value out of that whole stat being buffed, but it is at least a little bit faster. So you can't really go wrong with the buff in general. And it also makes it to where that it's just a little bit more snappy. There's also one last one that I want to talk about. You're not really going to be getting a bunch of value out of this. Because this is a sniper rifle, it's not going to be really good by default anyway. But it has a small reduction to hip spread. So, okay, apparently it's kicking me out of the game, so that's kind of weird. But they made it to where the hip spread is now way tighter. And it turns out that after this buff, you can also go over to Exclusive Ace's channel. That's usually where I go to have the exact details on all this kind of changes. It does have the best hipfire spread by default hipfire spread, which is really, really cool to see. So now it is the best when it comes to close quarters chances of in order to actually hit someone. And also really solid when it comes to ranges. It is one of the top sniper rifles when it comes to real long range potential. It does have explosive rounds for your Warzone players and just generally overall better handling. One thing to point out though, the only real thing that it really has that the FJX has over the intervention or the FJX Imperium is about three different things. One, this FJX Imperium does not have a arm multiplier, so if I aim at someone's arm, or if I can actually land, like at longer ranges anyway, I won't be able to get that kill to the hand there. So if I drop this guy and then goes all the way back out, maybe the dummies are not really showing this properly, but yeah, they're not really showing it properly there. But the SPX 80 in actual match anyway, not versus these dummies here. But the SPX 80 does have a one-shot kill area, obviously in the first and second damage ranges, or actually the first damage range. It'll have a one-shot kill, obviously, for the entire torso, but also for the entire arms as well, and hands. So everything above the legs and crotch here go up, and that will make it to where that's all a one-shot kill. So the SPX 80 is way more consistent when it comes to landing just one like blank shot, kind of hitting someone at longer or in close ranges. So hits like a truck, and it's really built for more so close ranges. But then you also have yourself the FJX Imperium, which is still really solid. It does have the whole one body multiplier to the entire chest, obviously, since it is a bolt action sniper rifle and one of the heavier ones. It just does not have that arm multiplier to it, which is kind of weird because it still works in the gun range, which is weird as can be. but it also has way better ranges, all that kind of stuff in general. One thing to also point out, for some reason, the FJX Imperium, I tried this on many different sniper rifles, it does seem to have a little bit better aiming stability to it, or idle stability, so when you put on other attachments to help out for range, it is also really solid. So overall, it is just an absolute stat machine. SPX 80, that's obviously one of its bigger damage profiles there, so again, a little bit more consistent, even though it does have a way shorter drop-off, or a way faster drop-off to damage ranges when it comes to way longer ranges there. You'll have to be hitting to like the upper chest to the head really far out. It's still up to 50 meters, so that's just fine, but that's one thing I wanted to point out. With this gun, it goes way further out. But one thing it also has over the FJX Imperium is that it does have a 9 millisecond faster ADS speed, which is kind of weird. So I believe that is the only actual area now where it is excelling over the FJX Imperium when it comes to any kind of handling stats. Reload speed is about the same. I think the reload speed is actually a little bit faster too. But that's not really that impressive for a sniper rifle. But one thing to point out there. But it also has a little bit faster fire rate. So obviously for it being a way smaller sniper rifle, a little bit faster when it comes to target acquisition like that, it's going to have a little bit faster bolt action there. So when you have the FJX Imperium with the FJX Blast bolt, the one that helps out with rechamber speed, it does match the standard default rechamber speed of the SPX 80. Obviously, you can put on the bolt to make it to where it is faster with this, and it will obviously be way faster than the FJX. And that's the only one thing to really point out. So this gun is a little bit slower when it comes to chaining kills back to back, but obviously it's not really going to be that big of a difference there, or that big of a concern. So obviously it's just way better. It's going to be way better when it comes to hip fire spread and close ranges. And I'll be going over the build to help out when it comes to quick scoping, since I think everyone's going to be running this gun for quick scoping. So what we're going to go ahead and do, and we're going to go ahead and use the FJX Imperium, and I'll be going over why I'll be using these certain attachments. Oh yeah, also one thing to point out as well, the FJX Imperium has an absurd amount of reserve ammo. I don't know why it has this amount, but like if you can see here, the SPX 80 only has 15 rounds by default. Obviously you can refill that if you use ammunition boxes. But for some reason, the FJX Imperium has 43 rounds in reserve and 5 in a magazine already, compared to everything else, which only has about like 3 magazines worth on every single one of them. So it has an absurd amount of ammo by default. I don't know why that is. So it is one thing to point out. It is the best when it comes to going on really long streaks. You don't need to worry about ammo unless you're missing a ton, which is going to be kind of hard to do with this kind of gun. Honestly though, it is probably one of the best sniper rifles to use now. I think they probably need to buff the MCPR to have a little bit more competition, but that's one thing to point out there. Let's go ahead and get into it. Right off the rip, we're going to build this thing to where it's way faster, just in general. So I want to keep the standard barrel, so we could have gone with the smaller barrel here, but it only helps out with 8 milliseconds. You can tune it to where it's around 10 millisecond increase, but that's almost a whole frame. It's not really going to be doing a whole lot with this sniper rifle at all. And it is also going to be hurting your hip fire accuracy in general, so we're not going to be doing that. We want to make it to where that this gun is still really viable up close, or as viable as you can get it. And we're going to be running the laser instead, because this also gives roughly around the same benefit, if not a little bit more now. So it's around like a 10 to 15% increase, and that is about 10 to 11 milliseconds, so it's not too bad at all. Adds no weight to your gun. It also has all accuracy and also speed to your weapon in general, which is going to work out really well. For this is going to be a quick scoping kind of build. You're not going to be really holding angles all that much, so you don't need to really worry about the laser being visible. since you are going to just be aiming, snap, fire, aiming, snap, fire, going back and forth with that. So it's not going to be that big of a deal. If you are going to be running for long ranges, obviously you might not want to run that attachment. After that, you want to go to your carry handle, and this helps out by a pretty good amount, roughly around 22 milliseconds. And this is the field wrap handle, and it gives you crouch movement speed and aim down sight speed. I tune this for sprint speed and aim walking speed as well, just to help out with speed in general. Laser also tuned for speed in general. Optics for your VOK, 4 times, and I just went with that since it is one of the first options. You can obviously run anything else on here. You can run the default scope if you really want to, if you're going to be doing that. I do recommend running the FJX Lux 7. This won't really help out when it comes to aim down sight speed, or you can tune it to where it can help out a little bit more. But you want to tune it for aim down sight speed and sprint to fire speed. So it makes it to where that you have more sprint speed, aim walking speed, and just generally more handling overall there. But for the VOK 4 times optic, to make it to where it's a lot more snappier, I tuned for close eye position and aim down sight speed as well. Obviously, the FJX Blast, you want to make it to where that you can follow up on kills way faster, so you don't really get caught up in a situation where you're pulling back your bolt while someone jumps around a corner. And then finally, I went with a rear grip, the Skull 40. So this is one thing I want to point out. It does give you the largest boost out of every other attachment for this, and it gives you a 44 millisecond increase. I tuned that for aim down sight speed and sprint to fire speed as well. However, it does make it to where that your flinch resistance is hurt a little bit, so you could be shot at and your flinch is going to be a little bit worse. So if you are going to be shooting with this gun, I recommend just kind of get into a habit of centering dead center on your target. So if they do end up shooting you and making you flinch, you will be bumped up to their head or upper chest. So it does work out really well. Around the 20 to 30 meter mark, the flinch is almost perfect. But that's pretty much the snappy build that I can give you guys, while still keeping a little bit more accuracy when it comes to hipfire spread. And it makes it to where that this gun is generally way more snappy. Now let's say if you do want to take off the the blast bolt on there, or the FJX blast bolt, if you don't really want that faster fire rate. Even though I recommend running it, it just makes it to where it does feel a little bit better. You can take that off and you can add something completely different on there. Probably the smaller barrel if you really want to, but I do recommend, again, this one stock. You can do aim down sight speed and sprint to fire speed. That way you're able to move around. You actually have a really solid movement speed while aim down sight, even though it is still pretty slow. But you can move around really quickly with this gun. And it doesn't really get rid of any of your aim down sight speed there. It actually increases it and all your mobility in general. So if you make this gun a little bit more snappy, you obviously have a way faster sprint to fire speed. So you can also get off a hip fire shot if you really want to. That's one thing to point out there. If you don't really want super uber top aggression when it comes to kill potential with the FJX Blast, definitely run that stock. You can't run the aim down sight speed stock, or the one that helps out with mobility, because that'll get rid of the rear grip. So you can only have one or the other, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, so this is going to be generally the entire build here. Again, if you don't want to run the optic, you want to just run the standard long range scope, you absolutely can. You just put on the bolt if you really want to, and then increase that as much as you want. One thing I will point out though is don't use the 7-round magazine. You know, you can't go on longer kills with it, or longer streaks without needing to reload. It does drop your ammo reserve down to a normal level. So you have 7 and 14 in reserve, so you have the standard 3 magazines worth. But the reserve is already really good as standard, so hopefully they never fix that. They'll just be a complete overlook on this sniper rifle. They'll by far be one of the best sniper rifles in the entire game. But there you guys go. That's going to be the real aggressive FJX Imperium build. And honestly, it is an insanely fun gun to use now, and I can't really say there's any other sniper rifle really worth using when it comes to aggression. Now you do have the Karak 300 that also got itself a major speed boost as well. So technically you can use that. It is not the fastest when it comes to ADS speed though, so that's just one thing. It's mostly built for moving around the map a little bit faster. But there you guys go. Let me know what you guys think about this build down in the comments. If you have any other really cool builds or anything that you want me to try out or cover, let me know. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.